Hello there. Janine LaRue again with LaRuelist Cafe. We are going to believe that this time there won't be any glitches in the technology, but we're not going to guarantee anything. But I tell you, I am wearing a shirt that I think many of you would get a little kick out of. I'm going to let you see part of it. It says, "Be the kind of woman that when your feet hit the floor, the devil says, oh no, she's up again." And yes, oh yes, I am up again. And not only did I get out of bed and put my feet on the floor this morning, our guest is the same type of woman. And I have been wanting to interview her for a couple of months. We made some plans to do it, but the time was not right then. The time was right now. I'm going to bring on a woman who, as I have said to people, that when my mayor found her, when she applied for this job to be the police director in Trenton, that he actually hit the jackpot, because I never thought. I had interviewed her for another job, and she is the bomb. She is that and all that. And I never thought she'd be interested in coming to Trenton. I was thrilled when I heard that she was being interviewed. But then you fast forward, I say about her, when she made the decision that yes, she would accept the offer, that was a trifecta for her, because she was in Newark. She was the first woman to lead that department in Newark. And so if she's the first woman, she's the first Black woman or any woman. She's the first woman to lead the police department in East Orange, and she is the first woman to lead the department in Trenton. So we're going to have a conversation with her, because, you know, when you are the first to come in and do anything, and when you are determined to do your job and to do it right and not be influenced by outside stuff, things begin to happen. People begin to nip at you. And so we're going to talk with Sheilah Coley. We want to hear it directly from the horse's mouth. I'm going to bring on our amazing police director, Trenton, New Jersey. How you doing, Director?
Okay, there we go. I am well. Thank you for having me on today.
Well, you certainly are well, and you are a sight for sore eyes, and we are glad to have you here. Thank you so very, very much. So,
It's my pleasure.
you know, before we actually get into the meat of what I'd like to talk to you about, because there's so much that I'd like to cover with you today, the first thing I want to talk about, I want you to hear about your travels and becoming a police, not just a police director. I don't know what that sound is, but we'll say okay. Don't
I
even
have
worry
no
about
clue.
it. Look, you're my police director in Trenton, and I feel safe, so I'm not even gonna worry about these other people. But I want you to talk about the jobs that you have held, because from what I understand in the times that I've interviewed you, you have held almost every job within at least the Newark Police Department that a police officer could hold. And I know you have at least 30 years of experience. So I'm going to let you tell your story.
Okay, so you're absolutely right. I have 30 years of experience in law enforcement. And to my knowledge, I still hold the record as being the first and only person to hold every rank in the Newark Police Department. So I thought that was an amazing accomplishment. And I usually tell people, if the glass is going to break, if the ceiling is going to be shattered, a Black woman will get there first. So that's my own personal feeling about how things go. But I started in the Newark Police Department in 1989, and I graduated the academy in 1990. And I think it's important to know that in 1996, I became a sergeant. So if you do the math from 96 to 2014, you can see most of my career I spent as a supervisor in that agency. And I think along with that, from every level, you gain a different perspective about supervision and management. And if you have not reached those heights, you can only make, I don't want to cheapen anybody's rank, so I'm trying to choose my words carefully. But I think you can only make decisions based on the level of experience that you've had. And so, as you stated, I've had tons of experience, and with that, I think comes a certain emotional intelligence. I hear people say all the time, "Where's Director Coley?" Oh, and I even had to say this to the mayor recently. I said, because I'm not showing emotion, don't think that I'm not invested. Don't think that I am not doing my best, but emotional people make emotional decisions. And you have to be emotionally mature enough to know when to step forward, when to step back. And I think all of the years of experience that I had in Newark has helped me to go on to other places and be that mature person that I need to be, that stern person when I have to be, but a fair person at all times.
And I can see that about you. The one thing that I love about you, you're unflappable. I mean, you're unflappable. I watch you when you give speeches. I watch you when you come into the room of various networking events. I remember when you were honored just recently by Noble. And you came into the room, and I mean, you were decked out, as they say, to the nines. In fact, those shoes on your feet, I wish I could walk in those kind of shoes. I'm like, this sister has it going on. Tell me about that kind of personality. What even made you think about going into law enforcement? And how old were you when you made that decision? I mean, and I don't want to know how old you were when you went into law, because I'm not trying to do the math, even though I know your age. But I'm talking about, is this a decision that you made in elementary school? I mean, when you were a young kid and they said, what do you want to be when you grow up? Did you say, I want to be a police officer? How did you make that decision?
Well, when I was younger, I think the first thing that I wanted to do was to go to the Olympics. I was very athletic, and I just knew that one day I would end up at the Olympics. That didn't happen. So
What
I
was your
guess it was
sport?
I played softball, and I ran track.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
So, um, but with that being said, I think I've said this several times before. Once I moved to North Carolina, the two careers that I was exposed to where all the men were in law enforcement, and virtually all of the women worked in some type of factory, be it JP Stevens making towels, or I forgot the name of the other warehouse where they actually made stockings. And I just didn't see myself doing either one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So it was law enforcement, and I was drawn to it. And I watched my uncles, my cousin, everyone talk about their different experiences. And I knew that that's what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I went into the Air Force at the age 17, thinking I could be military police and everything. And then they was like, nah, kid, you're too young. You have to be at least 18 to carry a gun. I'm like, but I'm here. So I had to choose another career. But law enforcement was never far away from my mind or my goal. And I don't want anybody to think that this was an easy journey for me. I tried out for different police departments before I was finally able to have myself conditioned and ready for the Newark Police Department. So, with that being said, I know there's a lot of talk about women in policing and standards and everything else. I just feel like I didn't ask anyone to lower a standard for me. I climbed to make myself better to meet the standards that were already set. And it took me a couple of tries to get there, but when I finally got there, I was there.
Well, I'll tell you something, and I don't drop names, but I'm dropping this name because I absolutely love this man. I was talking with Eddie Brannigan, and
Yes.
as you know, he was your president of the Newark local at one time, And he was
Yes.
the, in fact, he's the one who actually brought me on to the FOP to be their communications person. And he said to me, he said, look,
Mm.
when I told him that you were a candidate for Trenton, he said, I don't know if you're going to get her. He said, I don't know if you're going to get her. He said, Janine, she's good. He said, she is a cop's cop. And if
Mhm.
Trenton gets her, said that they have really gotten a winner. So, and I have followed you. You've been with us now for what, 14 months? And
Yes.
well, yeah, 14 months. And I'm telling you, I agree with Ed Brannigan. We got a winner. And we're glad
Mhm.
that you're here. Now, the other thing I
Thank you.
want to talk with you about, this is a tough time for police. This is a tough time. The public is trying to figure out how do we gain trust of the police. There are some circles, even in my own family, I say to them, well, I do the communications for the New Jersey Fraternal Order of Police. They look at me sideways. They're like, you're doing
Yeah.
what? So tell me, how do you handle this now, this stigma? And I mean, people are marching all over the world, not just all over this country, saying
Mhm.
Black Lives Matter, no
Mhm.
justice, no peace. And there's no way in the world, director, that you and I looking in the mirror and what we look like, that we can't understand and empathize with where our people are coming from. Tell me how you compensate for this.
Well, I think the easiest answer is that that's who I've always been. I've always believed in giving people a fair shake. And as a result of that, even in Newark, if I had to make an arrest, it was never a difficult arrest because I always treated people with respect, always spoke to them the way that I wanted to be spoken to. I've always tried to impart that into all of the officers that I've ever supervised. And even in Trenton, when we go out into the community, I said, we're going to be officer friendly today. And we're going to be that for as long as we can be that. But if we have to make an arrest, and if it becomes a little bit difficult and we have to use a little bit more force to bring the situation under control, then we're going to do that as well. But at no time should we ever use so much force that we're actually abusing someone. I have never believed that. I don't believe that. And I have stood up against that even in Newark. Certainly, different situations in East Orange, and I will continue to do that in Trenton.
What are some of the differences? Because we're considered a city, an urban area, but we
Mhm.
are a small place. We're a small body of land. And
Yes.
compared to Newark and compared to East Orange, we're a lot different. What are some of the differences that you have seen, and what are some of the similarities?
Well, the difference is that if you have the mindset that there is no cookie cutter approach to policing, it's easy to adjust and adapt. While East Orange is smaller than either Trenton or Newark, it was the most diverse. East Orange has been one of the agencies that I've worked with that has actually gotten it right. It is an agency that is reflective of the community in every rank. It is a agency that is reflective of gender. There are several female supervisors in the East Orange Police Department. So I look at them as a model agency, not so much in policies, but in terms of getting it right in terms of diversity, because they certainly got that right better than any other agency that I've seen.
So I'm just, and I want to continue some of the conversation, but every once in a while, I like to look at some of the comments that are coming in, and I think it's always exciting. We have Kelly Ledette, who is the chief of staff
Yes.
over the Department
Hi,
of
Kelly.
Education. She's like, Sheila is amazing. And then we have our very own Congresswoman, Bonnie Watson Coleman, who I just think walks on water, and she does walk on water, but I still think it too. And she says, we need more women in law enforcement leadership. Glad you're here, Director
Yes.
Coley. We have Trish Lee, who I think is one of our community cops, right? Trish is like, I
Yes.
stand with her. She has all her little hearts going. And of course, we have my favorite son, but he is my only son, Freeholder Sam Frisbee. We are with you, Director. And Dolly Weldon, Gordon, who is like, I'm watching. So I just want you to know, and there are more. There are people who are on your side. We are on, and we're going to get into the tough part of this
Thank
conversation in a
you.
second. That where people want to get into the tough conversation, but right now we're gonna keep it light for a couple seconds, and we're going to go into real talk because you've gotten to know me, and the folks who
Yes.
are watching know me well. I'm not afraid of real talk. Okay. And I believe that everybody should be unbought and unbossed. And I also
Yes.
believe that if they're going to do their jobs, they got to make sure, used to hear a joke with one of my good friends, Reverend Watley. I know you remember where Reverend Watley used to be the
Yes.
pastor of AME
St.
Church
James.
there in St. James. And Reverend Watley used to say every once in a while, some of these people think that they're a leader. And they look back and there's nobody following them, but they're talking about they're a leader. If you think you're a leader and you look back and there's nobody back there, you just taking a walk. So I want to make sure that you're not taking a walk. You are leading this department. You have a whole bunch of people who are walking behind you, and you're going to see more of it in the next week or two. We got some things planned. And that's not for this show, but I just want you to know we're taking no tea for the fever. So now, I want to know about these things. You mentioned excessive force, and I want to know about these chokeholds and all of this. Do we have this issue in Trenton?
Let me start off by saying that no one in the state of New Jersey, excuse me, has been trained in any form of chokehold as a defensive tactic. Do some people apply their own techniques? Yes. Is it proper? No, never. I stand with everyone who says that it should never, ever, ever be applied for any reason, under any circumstances. So if and when I see that someone has done something, use excessive force outside of the training that we have all received, I have no problem taking the unpopular step of removing that person from streets, putting them on administrative duty, pending outcome of an investigation. And whatever the outcome of that particular investigation is, if the determination is termination, then that's what it will be too. I have no problem at all making the tough decisions.
And I'm glad about that, because that's the other thing about leadership. And I think that moving forward, as we're looking at all these demonstrations, leadership is going to be about making tough decisions. And they are unpopular, but some of the problems, and I'm not talking about law enforcement, I'm just talking about in businesses, in government, in school districts, some of the problems come from people doing the same thing over and over again, and nobody wants to step out of the box. And then when you bring folks in and, during the interviewing processes, I have interviewed tons of people for tons of jobs in my career. And as soon as you say, I want you to be creative, we don't want things done the same old way. We don't want the good old boy stuff to keep going on. You bring them in, and then people start making real changes, and folks look around like, I was winking. I know what we said in the interview, but wink, wink, I was kidding. And then all of a sudden, all the good old boys are nipping because, well, we can't do this. And look, I just want to ask you for one favor. No. So, these type things, it really does mean that you've got to be courageous, and you got to take some unpopular stances. Now, one of the things I'm wondering, people will ask the question, well, what are the police doing on the streets? Do you know all the time what they're doing? How are their checks and balances? How do you monitor what is happening on the streets every day with your officers? How do you do that?
Well, that's why we have different levels of supervision. I'm certainly not going to be out on the front line every day with the officers that are out there. That's why we have sergeants who are supposed to monitor their behavior. Then we have lieutenants who are monitoring the sergeants and the patrolmen. So sometimes I hear things and then I have to go and I have to ask a question. But there has never been a time that anyone from the community has reached out to me and said, well, you didn't hear this from me, but you might want to check this. If they tell me to check something, it's probably something that they have seen that has maybe been kept from me, or maybe someone didn't think it was important enough to tell me. And I always go in and I check. And when I find what they told me, then I take an action.
So we have had so far 15 homicides.
Yes,
and
unfortunately.
We've had several shootings, and at least one I know of, and maybe more, has involved a child.
Yes.
People have been asking the big question: what's the plan? Is there a plan? And I know that some things, a lot of things in law enforcement, you can't show your whole hand, because once you do that, nobody's protected. But
Right.
Madam, tell us, what's the plan? The overall, the big plan?
Well, the plan is to put more officers on the streets, and that's around the clock. And additionally, we had another strategy that we were going to deploy, and then the pandemic hit. The pandemic has changed the landscape for everyone. And it's hard to tell an officer to go out and do the things that we want done when they're worried about a pandemic. We tell them, but we expected some resistance. We had some resistance, but that has not led to the increase of violent crimes. When you look across the nation, violent crime has increased everywhere since the pandemic. It is not unique to Trenton, but because I am there and leading the agency in Trenton, I'm always looking at what can I do next. And I think one of the handicaps among a lot of handicaps that we have in Trenton is that the needle has not moved much over the last decade. If I have a conversation with an officer, they take me back 10 years to when we used to do this, we used to have that. And it's like, I need to move the needle to current times. We have to work with what we have. We have partners in the assembly and everywhere, the attorney general's office, everywhere that's trying to help us get the equipment that we probably should have had 10, 15 years ago, but we don't have it, but we're getting it now. All of these things will help us reduce crime. We definitely have to strengthen the relationship that we have with the community. It breaks my heart that any part of the Trenton community thinks that I am not thinking about them. I am not connected to them. I have a vested interest in all Trentonians. I'm not looking at your race. I'm not looking at your heritage. I'm not looking at your gender. I want everyone who comes to work, play, and live within the borders of Trenton to be safe, to have a safe place to go, to be able to walk the streets and go to the corner store if you want to without being accosted. That is my goal. My team knows that that is my goal, and that is what I will continue to fight for. I think that if we could make that happen in the South Ward of Newark, which is much like the city of Trenton, I think that we can make it work in Trenton. It just takes all of us pulling together in the same direction.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And I know that over the next several weeks, people will, because now that we're convening a little bit more, we're
Yes.
starting to see people face to face. I'm not, but some people are. I'm old. I'm still going to stay in. I don't know when I'll see people again, and I'm not going to worry about it. But that's why I have the LaRuelist Cafe. Now I can see everybody I want to see. But we know that folks are very, very concerned about these shootings, very concerned about the homicide. And I have so much confidence in you, just knowing what you did in Newark, what you did in East Orange. And I know that if you need to bring in other agencies, such as the state police and the county folks and the prosecutor's office, I know that you will do that.
Yes, without hesitation.
Yes. So you've taken a little bit of fire here of late. And we're going to talk about this gingerly, because my personality, I like to just blow stuff up. And, as a police director, you like to de-escalate. So we're going to de-escalate. Maybe we'll de-escalate. But one of the things I know folks have, they have raised some questions about what went on the day of our march. Now, first, there's one thing I want to say about that march, and I was a little concerned, a little upset that the governor didn't give Trenton a shout out. You know, the weekend that people had all of their Black Lives Matter marches, because Camden got a shout out because they didn't have any issues after the march, and Newark got a shout out. But see, one of the things, and that's something I want to talk about, because we brought the young ladies on LaRuelist Cafe, we had 3 young Black females, one that just graduated from college and 2 are still in college, who put together a peaceful gathering that occurred for about 3 or 4 hours, and there were no problems. Yes. Nobody talked about that. My kids were there, my son and daughter-in-law, my grandkids. So I was wondering, well, will somebody give us kudos at least for that portion of the day? Because that was awesome. Now tell me about what you had set up that day, because I know you had plainclothes people all around, and you really did have a great strategic plan working.
Well, what happened was we reached out to our county and municipal partners. We had representation from every police agency within Mercer County. We had over 150 New Jersey State troopers that were on location, in, I would say, north of 70 Trenton police officers that were also deployed that day. We had a wonderful plan in place, and for 5 hours, from 2 to 7, we had absolutely no issues. The intel that we had was that the crowd had dispersed. It had gotten down to approximately 40 people. And we felt like that was going to be more than manageable. But unbeknownst to us, there had been a social media call to have people come and loot and destroy the city. And those people that were invited, some Trentonians, that's exactly what they did. That group of 40 to 50 people grew to 100, 200 people like a flash mob. And so we were trying to hold the line. I'm choosing my words because I never want to give up my agency, but I think that this is the time that I can best protect my agency by letting people know what we don't have. And what we didn't have that day was the equipment to engage civil unrest. What we didn't have that day were officers that had been trained to deal with civil unrest, or even how to disperse a crowd. So based on my experience, I felt it best that the state police and others who have had that training dealt with the crowd dispersal and crowd control, rather than to put my officers in a situation that I knew they were not capable of handling. And so I made some unpopular decisions that day, but based on all the information that I have at hand, I would make the same decisions today, because the only thing that would have happened with officers running full of adrenaline, going into a situation that you're unequipped to handle, it was going to end one or two ways. It was going to end with civilians being badly injured, or officers being badly injured. And neither one of those I felt was going to be a good outcome, because you don't have the training. Let the people who have the training do what they are better equipped to do. I will make sure that you get the training, so that if anything like this should ever happen again, you are properly equipped. And when I asked the question, it was very disheartening, because when I asked the question is, how is it possible that you guys have never been trained in crowd control?
In the city of Trenton.
In the city of Trenton. In the city of Trenton. I said, how is it possible? And that was information that I had at hand going into the situation that people who are second guessing my decision did not have.
Mm-hmm.
And so I live by the rule that everyone is entitled to their opinion. And sometimes there's a place for all opinions, and sometimes there is not. In a situation like that, it can be one leader. And when I saw my officers running around helter skelter with no leadership, I took the reins and said, no, stop, take a breath, take a beat, let's do this. And I think by doing that, not popular, not popular at all, but by doing that, we had no casualties, we had no serious injuries to anyone, citizen or otherwise.
Now let me say something, and I'm gonna go back to this a couple times. See, this is why I support you and I love you so much, because I had been working with police situations for a lot of years, way before I even started doing communications for the FOP. I was down in Winslow Township as a councilwoman, and I forced the hiring of the first female, black or white, the first female police officer. I was always up in their grill about doing things. And one of the things I have really gotten frustrated with some departments back 30 some years ago, my jurisdiction, they want to do it all, whether they know whether or not their people are equipped to do the job, but my jurisdiction, no, we're not going to let the county do it. We're not going to let the state do it. And for you to make the decision that I am not going to let my men and women get put into a situation that I know they haven't been trained for, either they will get hurt or somebody will get nervous and, God forbid, do something to a citizen and they end up dead. So I commend you. I commend you for making that decision. And you know what? That's what leaders do. And you took a hit for it, but I'm glad to hear you say, because I didn't know what you were going to say, if I had to do it all over again, I would make the same decision. Good for you, Director. Good for you. And you're absolutely right. On that night, we lost property. People lost property. One of your automobiles was burned. All of those things happened. Nobody went to the hospital and nobody went to the morgue because of that night. Good for you.
Thank you.
Good for you. All right, I'm off of that soapbox because I got enough soapbox that I want to finish the show about. Because let me tell you something. I am getting tired. You know, I was elected to public office back in 1978, 79. I was 29 years old. And I did something in a meeting that I have regretted for the rest of my life. I'm even ashamed to even repeat it because it really was not right. It was the mayor. I was a council person. I felt he wasn't listening to me. And by the way, this particular mayor, God rest his soul, he and I became bosom buddies. He was a Republican at the time. And after we got done with our relationship, he was an older guy. He changed his party to Democrat. Nobody could believe it. We worked together on everything. But I remember sitting in a council meeting one day, in a public meeting that was being aired on cable TV. And we went back and forth on this issue. And I couldn't believe these guys. I was the only woman sitting up there, you know, and they were like patting me on the head. Well, honey, well, this is the way we see it. Finally, I said, you're a bunch of mental midgets. Why in the world would an elected official, college grad, a lobbyist for the NJEA, a mother of children, why would I stoop to the level as a public official calling somebody a mental midget? Shame on me. And that happened back, well, I got into office in 79, but I remember when I called the person a mental midget, it was 1982. And at that time, I was 32 years old. I knew better than that. But as things have gone forward and I've watched more women and more minorities get into offices and also the quality the quality of elected officials has increased as well. I never thought that I would hear such name calling that I'm hearing from my elected officials here in the city of Trenton. In fact, and I don't want you to respond to this at all. In fact, I will tell you the name calling has gotten so outrageous, and the behavior. I used to be a high school English teacher, and I would send more kids, and a lot of my former students are my Facebook friends now. My former students are actually 62 years old, but a lot of my former students, I was sending them to the principal's office and the vice principal's office left and right, because I was not going to be disrespected, and I wasn't going to have that kind of nonsense in my classroom. I have gotten so frustrated with the elected officials in my city. I tell you, when everybody was sworn in, the mayor and the council, and I kept saying that people who asked my opinion, council people who asked my opinion, you gotta elect the councilwoman Kathy McBride as the city council president. We need her experience. She's going to bring decorum to the meetings. We need her. Oh, and oh my goodness, I'm good friends with Zach Chester, but I voted for Robin Vaughn. I thought, oh, her credentials are great, and on and on. And George Michelle, I'm like, he's a retired cop. I think that once Reed becomes mayor, George is going to be very, very supportive, and we're going to have a great team here. This has been absolutely sickening, watching some of the crazy behavior of people who have been elected to represent us, and folks all around this state looking and laughing at their behavior. And then on a national level, all of the homophobic and crazy in the gutter conversation that was heard on that tape. I am sick to my stomach. And my youngest grandkid graduated from high school yesterday. He's only 17 years old. He knows his parents will put him in the penalty box, take the keys to his car for a month if he behaved like some of these grown behind people who are supposed to be representing us in office. So I'm over that part of it. I had to get it out. That's just Janine LaRue. That's some of the stuff I do. But I do want to go back to, I heard that some elected official referred to you as clueless, called you a couple other names. Did this really, and I don't want to know the topic in executive session, because you'll get put in the penalty box, because I've been in a lot of executive sessions, but I do want to know if somebody called you a name and if that person was actually elected as a council person. I want to know that.
Yes, that absolutely did happen. It was an attack that I had never experienced before. And I know early on you said that I am unflappable, but I was so taken aback that I did not call anyone any names, but the tone and the anger that I use, I think is reflective of what happened in that executive session. I say that people, years don't make you expert. Experience, dedication, continual education is what makes you an expert in a field. So the fact that you have 40 years law enforcement experience, because I don't know when your needle stops. Because as far as I'm concerned, if you retired and you did not continue in that field, you have 25 years of experience in a particular field. But if you were a patrolman, you see everything from that vantage point, that viewpoint. You don't know what it is to move up the ranks. You don't know what it is, how supervision and management changes at different levels. So you are not an expert, and you can't make that difficult call because you have not lived it, you have not experienced it, you have not led anyone through anything. So you're not the expert in this particular situation, but each and every time you ask me why I made a decision that I made, I am more than qualified to tell you why I made it. And if I wish I had done something different, or if I stand firm and say I'll do the same thing again.
Well, and you know what? And I love that response, and that's the professional response. But the other part of it is, even if you give your reason as to why you made a decision, and our elected leaders don't agree with your answer, the name calling has got to stop. And I'm going to tell you
Yes.
something. This whole issue where people are marching, if you notice, I don't know if you noticed, madam, but the people who are marching now, most of them don't look like us. They haven't gotten
Exactly.
tired, and we're up to about 19 days because now folks are beginning to understand, and they want it to stop. Implicit racism, implicit biases. There are folks
Yes.
who are bigots and they don't even know they're bigots. They say crazy stuff. They don't even know that they're sexist. You know, when you come up to women and say, honey, sit down, I want to talk with you. Don't call me honey. I'm not your honey. Did I sleep with you last night? The answer is no. Refer to me as Janine, Miss LaRue, whatever. Don't call me a B name. Don't call me the honeys, the sweeties. That is implicit sexism, misogyny. People
Yes.
say crazy things. So some of this stuff is because people are aggravated because certain folks like you and
Mhm.
certain folks like me can't be. And when we can't be controlled, I know it looks as though I'm going off the air, but I'm not going off the air. I'm not afraid of technical problems either. But when certain folks who can't be controlled, what people do is what little kids do. I have seen young people in my classes when I was teaching. They were presenting their views on. I taught English, so they're presenting their views on a story on what they felt the plot was, and someone else would raise their hand and say, "Miss LaRue, I didn't see that," and I said, "Give
Mhm.
me your view." And then the other individual will come in and say, "Well, I don't know why you saw it that way. I know that I'm right." And the other student will say, well, this is my view. And the next thing you know, shut up. Shut up. You're just dumb anyhow. Well,
Mhm.
that's what that was. That was a crazy move on that council person's part. And I'm telling you, there are a bunch of us, not just from Trenton. I know a lot of people are watching the show right now. Some are from Trenton, and some are from the rest of New Jersey, and some are
Mhm.
from other states. We are not taking this crap anymore where our directors in our departments and other individuals are trying to make a point in meetings and even against our own mayor, Reed Gussior. The name calling is going to stop. And folks are like, well, how can you control the mouths of adults? Oh, we have techniques now. Because I've been getting a whole lot of phone calls over the last 48 hours, and I am telling you, people are tired of it. They are
Mhm.
tired of it. We're not taking it anymore. The other thing is, if you think, and this is one of the things that I wanted to tell you, when I asked you, will you come on LaRuelist Cafe? And you kind of hesitated because you know things are hot right now. And when you called back and said, I'm coming on, I'm glad you're here because I want people to know and I want you to know. You're not
Mhm.
taking a walk. You're leading. You got a whole lot of
Thank you.
people behind you, and you got a lot of supporters. And if we have to do a car parade to show people that we're supporting you, if we have to do demonstrations, if we have to take some drastic actions, I'd like to see a bill in the legislature and signed into law that you're given two chances as an elected official in the state of New Jersey to call people names, and you, just like people are disbarred, you're out. You can no
Mhm.
longer service the people because when you behave the way these people are behaving, they are not worthy to
Mhm.
call themselves an elected official. Go into wrestling or something. Don't go into being my governmental official. So I'm done with that. I am so done with that. And
What?
I'm glad you're here. Go ahead. You got one more thing to say? Say it.
So I wanted to say something in line with that. I remember when he was our mayor, Cory Booker always said that people will get the type of government that they deserve. And I think that this particular councilman thinks that he can do and say anything that he wants because he has never been challenged to the point where he was made to do better. And I think it is now is the time. We have the momentum that everyone in Trenton should deserve and demand the type of leadership and representation that they're entitled to. You don't have to have a person that can't string 5 sentences together as representing you in the city of Trenton. You don't have to have a person because they lack command of the king's language to resort to name calling because they don't know anything else to say. You deserve better than that. You should have better than that. Let's demand better than that.
And I appreciate those words. And one of the things as I look at the number of folks who have signed in even to this program, Trenton is the capital of the state of New Jersey. People hate it when I say it because I said I am a Trentonian now. I've been here now for 16 years, but we are the bomb. We are the capital. All of your state agencies are here. The state house is here. The governor is here. It is Trenton. So if not only the people who live in the city should be concerned about what our elected officials do, but folks from Sussex County to Cape May County should be concerned because they're looking like a bunch of buffoons, and I know all of them are not. A lot of those folks on council are bright people, but for whatever reason, they want to stoop all the way in the gutter for the shock effect. Well, you know what? We're not looking for shock effects in our government. And the other thing is, we got something different as a police director this time around. Nobody is going to bully you or investigate you, all of these crazy things to try to push you out of this office. You will stay in the city of Trenton for as long as you want to stay. And I was so thrilled to hear that the mayor still has complete confidence in your ability to lead this troop. Go do it. Let's see where we go with the crime plan. Let's see where we go moving forward. Everybody else, take a deep breath, chill out. And elected officials of Trenton, stop calling people names. We are tired of it. We are tired of it. I love you, Madam Director. I love having conversations on this show, but I'm telling you, I so much enjoy talking with you today.
Thank you.
So, thanks for stopping in on LaRuelist Cafe. There you got it. You got it from the horse's mouth. You know the things that have happened. And you know what? Tell your media, stop being ridiculous and having these crazy polls online. I looked online last night and I saw one of our newspapers had a poll about, do you think she should keep her job? They didn't even know what they were talking about. People were calling all around saying, how do we vote? We don't even know what this is about. The media looked ridiculous. I'm part of the media. Don't embarrass me like this. We are better than this. Don't have one person call you, whisper in your ear and say, put this up. This will be good. This will get her tonight. She'll stay up all night worrying about it. She slept like a baby. You know why? Because a lot of us called her and said, turn off your phone, turn off your TV, go to bed. You know what? Think about it. They're small minds. We love you. Thanks for staying with us. LaRuelist Cafe.